colombianos con una energía limpia y sostenible, el gas natural. Con más de 4.000 kilómetros de gasoducto, conectamos a 18 departamentos y más de 220 municipios a una fuente de energía eficiente que mejora la calidad del aire, protege nuestra vida y nuestro mayor tesoro, la biodiversidad. Somos una empresa de puertas abiertas, dispuesta a enfrentar los retos de un mundo en constante cambio. Nuestro compromiso es encontrar la mejor manera de impulsar la competitividad del país, utilizando energéticos de baja emisión que se integren con los procesos productivos de la industria colombiana. Encendemos la chispa de la transición energética. Llevamos el gas natural a los hogares, comercios e industrias, acompañando a todos los colombianos hacia una transición energética justa, sostenible, ordenada y competitiva. Somos la transportadora de gas internacional, TGI. Somos energía para prosperar.
Buenos días. Soy Karen Guzmán, gerente de financiamiento y relación con el inversionista del Grupo Energía Bogotá. Bienvenidos a nuestra conferencia de resultados de TGI del tercer trimestre de 2024. Esta conferencia se realizará en español con traducción simultánea y está siendo grabada. Los informes de resultados fueron remitidos el día viernes para su consulta. La llamada de hoy será liderada por Mario Caballero, director de finanzas de Cálidda, y por Jorge Andrés Henao, nuevo gerente general de TGI, a quien tenemos el gusto de presentarles el día de hoy. Jorge Andrés es ingeniero de petróleos con especialización en finanzas y gerencia avanzada de gestión de proyectos y cuenta con 28 años de experiencia en el sector de oil and gas. A lo largo de su carrera ha ocupado roles directivos clave, tanto a nivel nacional como internacional, liderando operaciones onshore y offshore en países como Colombia, Perú, Venezuela, Guatemala y Egipto. Una vez terminada la presentación de TGI, procederemos a atender sus inquietudes y a continuación seguiremos con la presentación de Cálidda. Para tal fin, los invitamos a escribir sus preguntas en el chat de la llamada, indicando su nombre y la empresa a la que representa. Le vamos a dar paso entonces a Jorge Andrés Henao, quien dará inicio a la presentación de resultados. Buenos días, Jorge.
Buenos días a todos, muchas gracias por su asistencia, bienvenidos todos y bienvenidas por supuesto las inquietudes que puedan tener durante la conferencia. En el primer slide que tenemos, vamos a organizar.
We're going to organize the result presentation in 3 parts: relevant facts, commercial and operational performance, and financial performance. And the first slide is important for us, and to remind our stakeholders our purpose. Our purpose is to maximize the infrastructure through solutions. The gas that the country needs. We are the first gas transporting company with an ability of 880 million cubic feet daily. Today we transport almost 500 million cubic feet in the domestic and industrial sectors that are very important for the country, thanks to this infrastructure that goes from Guajira, the northern part of the country, going through the eastern part of the country, connecting the flatlands and the central industry sectors of the country. Cali and the other cities and the main cities of the country are connected through the infrastructure of TGI. In the next slides, we show relevant facts of this last quarter. Compare the same quarter in 2023. We have revenues of above 8%, EBITDA that goes beyond 0.8%, net income 24.7%, and we will present utility that goes above 57% compared to the same quarter in 2023. What are the main points to highlight in this slide? We have operational expenses of 14% because the increase of fuel gas that is required to keep our operations, compression operations. Remember that TGI has 195,000 horsepower through different stations in the country, and hiring gas in order to move the fuel in these units has increased these percentages of our OPEX. However, this has gone down thanks to the reduction of the financial area and conscientious management of our debt. We have paid credits of 10%, with which we have interest rates, and there is less pay of net income. Therefore, we are there in compared to the same quarter in 2023. Next slide. We have to mention important milestones with the resolution of the resolution 102-008 of 2024. We are about to revalidate and to get very highly competitive billing and rates. We will have income by 39 billion pesos. This is an objective of the whole team and the administration, to have the billing schedule, the price schedule over the next few months, and that's what we have is very important in the operation and in the daily tasks of the team of TGI. We manage the prioritization for compressing the fuel gas that we mentioned last year with the reproduction 0209. At the long term, we were offering this gas for the consumption realities that we have for this type of fuel that we have. We have very important milestones that we need to highlight. All the projects that we are putting in place, we will find solutions to continue growing in the development of the infrastructure, to transport, are very important for us. One of them is finished also. The gasoduct Ballenas Barranca, executed 100%, that allow us to move 100 million cubic feet by day in September. Additionally, we're working on increasing our capability of Maraquita Guandalay gasoduct and Hamondi, that will bring us 20 million and 3 million cubic feet respectively in the increased capacity. They have the monitoring of the technical team, quality assurance, by which we can guarantee that we have this delivered by October next year. Next slide. It's very important to mention that thanks to the work of the whole team, together with the energy group, we have managed to reduce important expenses with new efficiency initiatives, with 8 billion pesos with the GEB, and expenses optimization by 3.3 billion pesos. And this gives us a total of 10.3 billion for 2024. We are working on innovation and improving technology, improving that will allow us to give us an additional leap in all AI that can be used today in order to grow our development. We have new business cases with important impacts, with the use of preventive maintenance, process automation, and real-time data management to analyze all the information that can be analyzed. Additionally, we have taken place in the delivery of the first stage with the city administration with biogas for Bogota. We will have a sustainable solution in the long term of what we have in TGI to use this gas. This is an agreement with the Swedish fund. It's a very important thing to say. We are glad to say, escucha, se escucha dos veces. We're permanently working to avoid fugitive emissions of the different compression stations. It can be reduced considerably. With 27% of these emissions, we will continue working to reduce this as much as possible, to reduce the emissions in the coming years. Additionally, the component of company and social responsibility has already been signed. We are working with 13 different counties in Santander and other corridors where the gas pipeline generates value, and a real alliance with the communities that are in our areas to extend that TGI value to all the communities. We're working on 5 new projects for 2025, and additionally, everything connected with the internal auditing. Now I give the floor to Beatriz to work about the commercial performance. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. Let's start with operational performance. It's important to mention that in the third quarter of 2024, the contracted capacity went up with 4.5%. This is 7 million feet per day. Why do we have that increase in this last trimester? It comes because of all the expectations and gas provision that created more capacity contracted, and the transport. Additionally, that contracted capacity is uninterruptible. As we see there, we kept the same transported capacity, and we need to highlight that is in this third quarter of 2024, that in September more specifically, we had a high volume because of the thermal ability, because as we all know, we did not have the phenomenon of La Niña. On the contrary, we had important droughts. And this is expected to end in October. This behavior is what means that for the quarter we would have an increase of 2% in revenues. This is to say around 10 billion pesos. However, as it was mentioned before, in previous quarters, we have a variation, an income variation of 0.3%. This is to say 93 billion plus that last year, in spite of the indexation in the component was of 3.79. This has happened not only because of the thermal issue, because of the phenomenon Niño or Niña, but because in the 2 previous quarters And then this behavior of the revenues with 2% growth, with what Jorge mentioned in the OPEX growth of 14%. This is what gives us operational variables in a negative manner in 8.1%. This is to say minus 26 billion pesos. Within that behavior, and especially because of the OPEX component, beside what was signaled, the increase of combustible gas or fuel gas, its price has grown twofold. In fuel gas, the other component is operational costs, which increase because of growth index or growth, because of salaries that we know were driven by a minimum salary variation that increased around 12%, and inflation, which additionally introduced higher costs because of the collective convention negotiated this year. However, TGI has been working decisively to offset the increase of costs by administrative expenses reduction, by trying to reduce precisely the component of staff and administrative costs without any harm to the operation. Another important fact is that in OPEX, as we have signaled before earlier, in the two previous quarters, provision growth on what we are doing around the difference in CUAP, where we have a controversy before the CREG, the National Commission for Energy. The CREG implied the previous CUAC, which is 1094. So we have a controversy right there. And because the remittance, we have made provisions of 17 billion in the third quarter of 2024. Moving into EBITDA, those provisions are eliminated. That's what explains why EBITDA is not as negatively affected in terms of operational utility. But just as Jorge indicated, moving into the net profit or net income indicator, we have substantial increase in net income of 40 billion pesos. This is given and explained because our debt is indexed in the IBR component, which has been positively affected by the central bank monetary policy, with a reduction of 325 basic points of the intervention tax, because we in TGI we have worked in such a way that we have managed a prepaid of Club Tip of 402 million pesos, and we have also done reductions of the spread tax that we have on IBR that had allowed us to reduce the tax interests. And just as Jorge indicated, is to make the tax income tax to be positive. That income tax has benefited by devaluation that affects the deferred passive. In the case, there was an increase of 110 pesos in September, and that allows us to offset the whole impact that you already know very well. Where last year we had to do the peso conversion and to hire a derivative on the bond and club dip that increased our financial costs. That causes us to have a negative variation throughout the year of 164 billion pesos that we have been offsetting with the factors already mentioned, both in income increase and improvements in the behaviors of costs and expenses, and also in the financial component. With regards to indicators of debt or leveraging and interest compliance, we have already reduced our debt. At this point in time, our balance in 3.2 trillion pesos, out of which the bond with maturity 28 represents 70%. This is to say 2.8 trillion pesos on the financial credit, and this is the club deal. And the rate, as we have signaled and indicated, has been going down, and we expect it to reduce even more for the last quarter, not only for the current circumstances of the central bank, but also with our management and what have been doing with the spread, especially because of that policy of offsetting the impact that we've had of peso conversion. We have reduced leveraging indicators. For example, gross EBITDA debt, that is in the cut of the 3-quarter, only in 2. We are basically in the middle of the indicator that is considered to be reasonable. Also, gross debt, we are complying with that. And EBITDA behavior on financial expenses. We are in 3, but we have enough liquidity that has allowed making prepayments, and we will continue. We give our presentation and we'll answer your questions. Thank you, Beatriz. So far, we do not have other questions. We're going to wait and give the audience a few minutes, a few moments. We don't have questions, no more questions. Thank you very much, the TGI team, thank you. We will begin the Cálidda result presentation with Mari Caballero. My children have been the most important thing for me. I've never let anyone tell me that I cannot do anything because I am a woman. I attended workshops where I learned about the Cálidda plan. Now I can spend more time with my family because I now can afford to have my things. I was able to buy myself a washing machine and a stove, and they helped me a lot. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us to the revision of results third quarter 2024 from Cálidda. There are three messages that I would like to bring forth in this update. Number one is that we continue our path of expansion. We are adding more kilometers, more connections during this quarter, as we will see in the results in a few moments. Secondly, we continue moving forward positively with this transformation process. This is highly relevant. As it was said before in previous updates, we still have more opportunities in the segment of heavy vehicles. We have transformed around 1,300 big vehicles, which means growth of 21%. We are in a very positive path of getting more penetration in the right there. And the third message, we are having positive engagement with the government for the plan, for the expansion plan that we have presented, that seeks to bring gas natural beyond the borders of Cálidda license, which is only Lima and Callao. So far, that's where our license covers, and we want to go together with the government with all this negotiation. I will further explain that later on. In regards to these the quarter behavior, we have the growth of 3%, but it's important to bear in mind that because of climate factors, Peru has had drought during 2023. Therefore, the reservoirs are way below normal conditions, and we have thermal centrals that do not participate in the generation process, and they are less efficient unless they would operate at high capacity. Excluded the component of volume, we have the differentiator with regulated volume presents good growth of 3.5%, and we have growth in all the segments, residential and commerce, alongside housing. We have already 30,000 connections added this year. We expect to close with 180,000 connections. In vehicles, we have very positive development. Vehicle conversion, especially heavy vehicles, and in the industry, we've had very good behavior, especially in fishing, and they have contributed to the growth of 3.5. In networks and connections, we have added 46,000 specifically. You might remember that every time we are closer to a maturity point in the concession, with which we expect to have further growth, but the growth is going to be marginally less. This represents for our concession 1.9 million connections and around 18,000 kilometers worth of grid bit together. In terms of EBITDA, we have growth 7% in our quarter. This is leverage because of the rates. It increased 3.5, and this creates an impact of incremental investments to the regulator last year, and that they were finally approved at the end of this year, and they represent 700 incremental kilometers of capex and networks, with which the update of the billing gave us 3.5. The volume, as I said, out of the thermal part, we have positive growth of 3.5. Additionally, the non-regulated businesses that are complementary have behaved positively. The financing financing business, and as a whole we have solid growth of 7%. And ratings, we continue with investment grade for all the different revisions that we've had. Next slide. About the project proposed to the government in order to bring natural gas out of our licensing area, which is only Lima and Callao. This project was submitted a year ago. It's an investment of $400 million. It's our goal to bring natural gas to 7 regions that are in the central east part of Peru. We would have like 2,500 kilometers of networks, and we would impact the lives of around 150,000 homes. The main reason that it was decided is that it requires relevant investment for lower demand, which makes it financially not attractive. Our proposal, however, that resolves that problem, and it turns into a win-win for Peru and the population and for Cálidda. The attractive part is combining investment and demand with what we have in Lima and Callao. With that, you would create a cross-subsidy that in Puno and Lima and Callao would be marginal. I will give it in a few moments. With the competitivity levels that we have, you would not feel the big difference, and trying to ensure also that these areas are part of that. Are relevant areas that gas today that serves all of Lima, Callao, north and south of Peru, comes from Camisea, which is in Cusco. Today, the population in Cusco, after 20 years of the gas is extracted from Camisea, they do not have access to natural gas. This is a project that will add in a very important manner to a social debt that Peru has with its population. There's going to be jobs created, investment, and competitiveness of natural gas, and it's going to be very positive also in terms of the results that we seek to create within the company. The stage that we are in right now, we are closing negotiations of contracts. After that, there would be an analysis from the Ministry of Economy and Finances to review the contracts, trying to ensure that the risk profile and contract return won't change because of the proposal that we are making. In upcoming updates, I expect to bring you new information, but as I said, this is a project with highly positive impact, especially for the population in Peru. We want to bring it forward and take it to fruition. We hope it becomes a reality. In other relevant events, we were able to connect the Rivaliati Hospital. This is an important milestone. This is the largest hospital in the whole of Peru. These are about 1,600 beds. An important benefit is going to be there. This is an important signal for the health sector. We're still from the state. We have opportunities to continue connecting hospitals. As I said before, one of our growth sectors is focused in developing the vehicle sector for heavy vehicles. First of all, we need to generate incentives for the logistics operators so that they have access to capital to accelerate this conversion process. These schemes have support from the government as well as from the private sector. And the second strategy is clearly in the whole educational process. So we are participating in fairs and fora in order to inform all the actors in the logistics chain and to show them the benefits of natural gas in terms of support to the environment and savings. We celebrated the 20 years of Cálidda, with which there have been a series of fora where the benefits of natural gas have been presented and introduced to the participants. Now moving into commercial and operational financial performance. As I said, the volume of the quarter was in 813 million cubic feet a day, growth compared to 2023, but focused especially about the generation surge and associated to the climate topic. If we exclude that component, and it can be clearly seen, generation goes from 70 to 69%, and all the other segments are growing with a calculation of 3.5%. The billing competitivity remains high, very relevant in residential sectors, creating efficiencies against the closest substitute with 40%. In case of the industry and generation, competitivity up until 80%. Next slide, please. Commercial development, we added 46,000 new connections. With this, we have overcome the 1.59 million clients or customers. Next year, we should be adding a little over 100,000 connections, with which we expect to go over the 2 million clients, and the massification of gas in Lima and Callao started with the lowest social economic layers of society, with which, after covering all these different social areas, we are moving into higher social and economic levels of society. That is very interesting because high-income households tend to have 2 or 3 times the consumption of the lower segments of society. That will increase. And we added around 270 kilometers. Next slide, please. Financial development, EBITDA of the quarter was $64 million. Net profits, $28 million. About the levers of growth, we need to highlight here is that EBITDA margin continues improving. In previous quarters, its margin was in 61.3%. Almost 70 basic of improvement, and we continue to find efficiencies in the operative part without ignoring the fact that we are still in an expansive process. We want to bring this margin to 70%. Next slide, please. In terms of debt, during the third quarter, we outlay a loan of $90 million with Scotiabank, at 5 years time bullet. In the framework of sustainability, we have a series of indicators, compliance, especially in terms of environmental objectives. We have to reduce our carbon footprint by 30% by 2030. These resources will be used for CAPEX and working capital. There are a few shorts that we had, with which our net debt, after paying off the short ones, our ratios of leveraging are under 4, which are the objective that we have been looking for, and coverage above 7. Next slides. About the future perspectives, we expect to close this year with something about 1,000 new kilometers worth of networks, 180,000 new connections, and EBITDA, and the guidance that we have, it has improved versus previous quarters. It should end at around $245 or $250 million, and the range EBITDA will be 3.8, and I am glad to be happy to answer your questions. Thank you. We asked a few questions, especially for TGI, and if we have questions for Cálidda. We will pass them on to you. Let's answer the questions from Sebastián Gallego from Ashmore. The first one is, good morning. Thanks for the presentation. Several questions. What changes in TGI's strategy and execution of it can we expect with Jorge's arrival as a CEO? Thanks for the question. Can you hear me? Yes. Basically, we want TGI's vision to be a long-term vision. We want it to be sustainable and with a technical foundation. We have 190,000 horsepower. We need to continue with the supply of industrial gas, household gas. So we need to find solutions. See how can we transport more and deliver gas that the country requires. We need to leverage the knowledge of the working team with technical foundations and to be part of the solutions. We need to participate and lead and seek for these solutions to be sustainable in the long term and in a very specific manner. One more question from Sebastian. Give more information about bidirectionality. Is it we're only waiting for Promigas to finish their part? What is the total transport capacity going to be? Good morning. About bidirectionality, I want to report that there is a directional from Barranca to Ballena. Bidirectionality is 1 million cubic feet you can transport from Barrancas and towards Ballena. About Promigas, currently up to Ballena you can have a capacity of 66 million cubic feet per day. However, the total project of Barranquilla-Ballena is of up to 170 million cubic feet per day. In order to achieve that, the regulator already approved the income to Promigas, and the deadline is of 33 months that would finish in August 2027. Promigas has informed that they might be able to join in earlier. The deadline is for 2027 and the deadline would be August 2027. One more question from Sebastian. What changes can you expect in the management, senior management of the new CEO? Thanks for the question. Beyond more than changes, this is a complement to the previous answer. In the long term, we want to find solutions, and we need to find a team that has a technical background and that will allow us to motivate the whole organization. They will allow us to find solutions. That foundation of leadership will help us to direct the projects that will allow for gas supply. In the long term, that would allow us to provide the supply that the country needs. We need to empower the team so that they can generate solutions and work the best way together and to be part of a team that allows us for growth with a long-term vision. Thank you, Jorge. One more question for Sebastian. The EBITDA ratio on interest looks tight with respect to the objective. What do you expect ahead? Thanks for the question, Sebastian. As I had the opportunity to mention that we expect to continue working on the decrease of the debt service, moving on with prepayment through reducing the spread that we have, and when in time we will reviewing the strategy with the payment of debt, the bond payment due for 2028 that has the derivative component. What we have projected is that given expectations from going out of the billing, the ratio is in it's 3 times there. However, with our projections in regards to the price schedule and operative costs and debt operation, we expect for that coverage to increase from the next year on. One more question from Sebastian. What can you expect from the remaining life of TGI's contracts? If the fall was expected, how much more can it fall, and what strategies does TGI have? The CAPEX plan has gone down, has reduced. Hello, this is Wolfgang Levy, the Commercial Development Director of TGI. In terms of contracts, we're having variations. If the volumes have been managed in a chaotic manner, the contracts are changing because the sources that our remittance or clients resort to are changing. As we see, there is cost per stretch. That is what allows us to increase the income by 2%. If the contracts remain the same, we see that now they are moving into different sources, and the whole sector is attentive to see where the next sources will come in the midterm. Last question from Sebastian. At the end of the day, what can we expect in terms of dividend payment for 2025? Regarding dividend payment, we continue with the dividend policy, which is to generate basically around 90%, and we expect to continue serving that policy. That is under consideration. In order to allow us more space in the management of prepayment, we are going to move the dates of dividend payment for the end of June and August approximately. Thank you, Beatriz. And now questions from Andrés Duarte from Corfi Colombiana. The first question is, what are the changes today, the update, the price schedule update for 2024? This solution includes 2 main changes. The first one is the acknowledgement of the exchange rate risk recognition. Let's remember that the price schedule changed from dollars to pesos, and there is a need to recognize and acknowledge those transporters who have a debt in dollars and to have a risk coverage and a coverage cost because of this peso conversion. Additionally, about the norm life of the assets, this is an important change for TGI. Remember that the resolution 175 for 2021, when the assets ended their norm life, the regulator was indicating that the value of the asset went to 0 and only new investments were recognized. The CREC is recomposing new recognitions. They are recognizing the asset that ends its normative life. Expectations and variables for the volumes transported versus volume. Just as I said before, it was probably shown in the graphs. The third quarter of 2023 was similar to the third quarter of 2024 expected because of the drought by La Niña and essential demand. We see that it is constant and it stays there. We are firm that the volumes will continue its current behavior.
Karen, no te escuchamos, disculpa, Karen.
Gracias, ya. Con eso terminamos las inquietudes. Gracias, Wolfgang.
With that, thank you, Wolfgang. Those are questions for TGI, and we have questions from Andrés Duarte from Corfe Colombiana for Cálidda. Limiting Clima Callao, what space of growth does Cálidda have today? Yes. Thank you, Andrés. We still have potential of 3,000 kilometers to continue developing the natural gas grid. With that, we will be giving it in connection conversion. Today we're in the around 1.9 million connections, and that potential would go to 2.3 or 2.4 million connections. That is the space. 3,000 more kilometers to build and around 300 or 400,000 incremental connections. One more question from Andres. Camisea project is part of a larger and long-term plan to expand to the south of the country. This addendum or project that we have submitted to the government seeks to create an addendum, add an addendum to our contract. What we are seeking to have is a contribution to what we already have in place today, is to be able to achieve 10 incremental years. Cálidda today has a license contract that will end in 2023. Our contract allows us to present expansion incremental plans that need to be evaluated and to have in retribution more years that would extend potentially to 10 with the investment level that we are proposing. And after the technical analysis that we have done, we are requesting as part of this negotiation to be given those 10 additional years to have the retribution of the investments put in place, with which we are seeking our contract to have an addendum, a passive addendum, to finish in 2023 to 2033 to 2043. That is the framework that we have in place. Last question from Andres as well. Can you develop the information about the project of massifying the cargo gas in Peru, for example, stations in key points, and so on? Beyond the need for stations or for charging stations, here the most important lever is to create incentives in the logistics sector so that they accelerate the transformation of their diesel fleet to natural gas. Studying the topic of stations in Lima and Callao, we have around 300. We do believe that in order to facilitate this process of a larger conversion or adoption in the segment of heavy vehicles, more stations should be located out of the city where there is a concentration of trucks, big trucks or buses. We're talking about 5 more stations, but the most important relevant is to create incentives so that the logistics sector continues adopting the conversion of their fleets. And our strategy or the lever that we're using is access to financing. We have been working with the government so that the government implements financing schemes through a program that is called FICE, which today is underway and is financing especially motor conversion for heavy vehicles to very good conditions, practically without any interests. Additionally, we, alongside the natural gas grid, TGP and Camisea, Cálidda, we have constituted a trust of some $30 million basically to be used for credit facilities to the logistics sector so that they would have find favorable conditions in terms of financial incentives so we could accelerate this conversion process. We're also working with the sales, what vehicles, what gas-powered vehicles are available. We have developed incentives to dealers so they continue importing vehicles that are already manufactured with the whole technology to operate with natural gas. These strategies, this is a positive virtuous cycle. Success starts to happen with the more important operators. In only 1 year we have grown around 20% in terms of conversions of heavy vehicles. We have a few figures. We have around 8,000 large vehicles operating. By 2030 we should have 30,000 vehicles in Lima, Callao. Thank you, Mario. Thank you very much. And with that, we close our call of results. Thanks for your question. From the teams of engagement with the investor, TGI and Cálidda will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Yo cociné con leña desde los 14 años. Si no hay leña seca, pues tú hay que tumbar un palo y echarlo a secar, porque cuando no hay leña seca, la leña verde no arde. Yo creo que entre estos años uno tiene que tener algún daño de haber cocinado uno con leña. Con biogás las cosas son más fáciles para uno trabajar en la cocina.
La salud de uno pues va a ahorrarla más por la vaina del humo, hasta la ropa, porque todo empieza a oler a humo. Ustedes saben que el humo jode el medio ambiente. Y la comida pues oye más rápido, porque como es una candela ahí al 100.
Se nota la felicidad en expresar todo ese ahorro que se ha tenido que hacer en todo ese tiempo de traer gas en pipeta, porque están aprovechando sus propios desechos de sus animales, de los mismos baños que tienen ellos.
Decidimos hacer un piloto para que 4 familias inicialmente empezaran a disfrutar de un biodigestor que no solamente genera energía limpia, sino que ayuda con todos los temas de uso y manejo de aguas servidas.
Y sí, vinieron, lo instalaron y al mes ya teníamos el gas. Yo no lo creía. Yo dije, pero ¿cómo voy a hacer eso?